Hi friends, welcome back to my channel Only Bio. Continuing with the series of challenging MCQs. So I've numbered it from 6 to 10. All such MCQs which require a kind of a discussion. Question number 6 relates with the chapter Genetic Engineering. You are asked to generate within 2 weeks a collection of recombinant plasmid clones that contain pieces of a large proportion of all human genes. What would be the fastest strategy? Your options are A. Digest the human DNA with a restriction enzyme. Digest the plasmid with 2 further restriction enzymes. Ligate the human and the plasmid DNA and transfer DNA to the bacteria. B. Digest the human and the plasmid DNA with the same restriction enzyme. Ligate the human and the plasmid DNA and transfer the DNA to the bacteria. C. Digest human DNA extensively with a conventional endonuclease. Digest the plasmid with the restriction enzyme producing blunt ends. Ligate the human and the plasmid DNA and transfer the DNA to the bacteria. And D. This cannot be done in 2 weeks or less. Friends, remember, plasmid is a double-stranded circular DNA molecule which is autonomous and capable of self-replication, found only in few bacterial cells. Plasmids are used as tools in genetic engineering. A plasmid that undergoes a change in the genetic matter is called as recombinant plasmid. The correct answer for this particular question is B. We take the human DNA, we cut it with a restriction enzyme at a particular site. Restriction enzymes are the enzymes that are capable of cutting the DNA only at certain points, hence called as restriction enzymes. These are also called as the molecular scissors or biological scalpels. You use the same restriction enzyme on the plasmid so as to make some space for accommodating the human DNA and fitting into it. Once that DNA is introduced into the plasmid DNA, we ligate it, that is stick it with the enzyme DNA ligase. The plasmid DNA will now be called as the recombinant plasmid DNA, which will then be introduced into the bacterial cell, which on replication will help us to produce the clone of the same. On the screen, you can see an example of recombinant DNA technology used for plants. So, we take a plasmid from a bacterium called as Agrobacterium tumefaciens. This plasmid is called as the TI plasmid. That stands for tumor-inducing plasmid. So, we have isolated the TI plasmid. We cut this TI plasmid with a restriction enzyme at this particular site. We also use the same restriction enzyme on a DNA and cut a fragment of the gene which has some desirable characters to control. Now this gene is introduced at this particular area and is going to be treated, stuck there with the help of DNA ligase. So we can see that now this plasmid has a different gene at this site. Hence, it is called as a recombinant TI plasmid. We introduce this recombinant TI plasmid into the plant cells which have been cultured. So, during culturing, the introduced or the desirable gene can be introduced into the plant. So, the plant thus grows, showing up the new trait which was controlled by the introduced gene. Hope you understand this. The question which comes next relates with the chapter Principles of Inheritance and Variation. The question is, the relationship between genotype and phenotype is rarely simple. The term pleiotropy describes dash, and your options are A. When a heterozygote individual has a phenotype intermediate between those of the 2 types of homozygotes. B. When a heterozygote exhibits phenotypes for both of its alleles. C. The ability of a single gene to affect multiple phenotypic traits. And D. When one gene affects the expression of another gene. Friends, remember, genotype refers to the genetic constitution of an organism for a particular trait, and phenotype is nothing but the external expression of that particular trait. The term pleiotropy is being taken from two Greek words, pleion, which means more, and tropos, which means way. This occurs when one gene shows two or more phenotypic expressions. Such a gene that exhibits multiple phenotypic expressions is called as a pleiotropic gene. So I hope you can now guess the answer. The answer is C. The ability of a single gene to affect multiple phenotypic traits. Look on the screen for understanding the example of pleiotropism. So this is a chromosome, and this is an example of pleiotropic gene, that is HbS. Hb stands for hemoglobin and S stands for sickle cell anemia. This gene HbS shows two different traits. Here it is called as trait A and trait B. But in simple words, what it means is it shows two different expressions in homozygous and heterozygous conditions. In homozygous conditions, HbS acts as a lethal gene. इसका मतलब है कि जब HbS साथ में आ जाते हैं तो that can act as a lethal gene. It can prove to be fatal. यानी उससे death हो सकती है of the bearer. So the ratio instead of 3:1 is going to be 2:1. However, in the heterozygous condition, that is HbA-HbS, the person can show the sickle cell anemia trait, that is he will act as a carrier but will not die due to the presence of HbS. Friends, remember another example of pleiotropism is phenylketonuria. Question number 8 relates with both the chapters photosynthesis and respiration. The question is, the chemiosmotic hypothesis attempts to explain dash, and your options are A. The movement of water into the chloroplast and its use in photosynthesis. B. The coupling of ATP formation to electron flow in an electron transport chain. C. The movement of lipid-soluble molecules through a membrane. D. The movement of NADH from the cytoplasm into the mitochondrion. Friends, remember, chemiosmotic hypothesis was proposed by Dr. Peter Michel. Now, chemiosmosis is nothing but the movement of a chemical from higher concentration to a lower concentration across a membrane. This hypothesis suggests that a proton motive force, I repeat, a proton motive force, protons are nothing but H plus, are responsible for driving the synthesis of ATP. So according to this hypothesis, protons are pumped across the inner mitochondrial membrane as electrons go through the electron transfer chain. So this results in a proton gradient with a lower pH in the intermembranous space and an elevated, that is higher pH in the matrix of the mitochondrion. Please remember, the inner mitochondrial membrane is impermeable to protons, यानी वो protons को अपने पास रखेगा नहीं. Okay, so this helps the formation of ATP. So I suppose now you can guess the answer. The answer is B. That is the coupling of ATP formation to electron flow in an electron transport chain. But friends, please remember, this is not just in case of mitochondrion. This also relates with the formation of ATP in non-cyclic photophosphorylation. You might have seen this particular representation in NCERT textbook as well as in the government textbooks. So this is a representation of how ATP is synthesized in non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So the concentration of H plus ions inside the lumen of the thylakoid membrane, you can see here, it goes on increasing. So this establishes a kind of a proton motive force or a proton pump or a proton gradient. इन सिंपल वर्ड्स, अंदर H प्लस आयंस का कॉन्सेंट्रेशन बहुत ही ज्यादा होगा एज कंपेयर टू आउटसाइड, जहां पर H प्लस आयंस का कॉन्सेंट्रेशन कम होगा. सो जैसे ही अंदर H प्लस आयंस कॉन्सेंट्रेशन बढ़ जाएगा तो H plus ions start moving through the F0 particles. When they touch the F1 particles, it stimulates the enzyme ATP synthase that helps in conversion of ADP to ATP. The next question is being taken from a chapter which relates with both hormonal coordination as well as excretion and osmoregulation. The question says, the primary factor that regulates the erythropoietic activity is dash. And your options are A. Kidney, B. Erythropoietin, C. Oxygen, D. Bone marrow. Friends, you're likely to be confused here in between option A and option B. But surprisingly, the answer here is C. Oxygen. Let us understand. Erythropoiesis. Again, this word is a Greek word, or rather it's taken from two Greek words. Erythro meaning red and poiesis means to make, या formation. So erythropoiesis is nothing but the production of erythrocytes, that is red blood cells, from the erythropoietic cells, stem cells you can call them as, in the bone marrow. And the production of the same is stimulated by decreased oxygen in the circulation. Let's understand this. Look on the screen here. Homeostasis. Homeostasis is the normal balanced state. So at that time there is no issue. Imagine that the homeostasis is a bit disturbed, or rather there is an imbalance. Imagine that the oxygen carrying capacity has reduced, or the oxygen level in the blood has decreased, causing hypoxia, hypoxia. Hypo means less, oxia means oxygen. This may occur due to decreased RBC count or decreased amount of hemoglobin, जैसे कि anemic conditions में होता है. So the oxygen levels in the blood drop down. This stimulates the kidneys, which thereby release the hormone erythropoietin. Erythropoietin in turn stimulates the red bone marrow cells, which thereby increase the production of the erythrocytes. So whenever there is an enhanced erythropoiesis, so the RBC count goes on increasing, and as the RBC count increases, the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood also increases. So once again, homeostatic control is obtained. The next question. This question number 10 relates with the chapter Human Health and Diseases. It is, cells that bear the CD4 surface antigen participates in dash. And your options are A. HIV infection, B. Phagocytosis, C. Certain B cell responses, D. All of these. Friends, CD4 क्या होता है? In molecular biology, CD4 stands for cluster of differentiation 4. It is a glycoprotein. I repeat, it is a glycoprotein. This is very important. It is not a lipoprotein, it's a glycoprotein found on the surface of immune cells such as the T helper cells, the monocytes, the macrophages and the dendritic cells. CD4 and helpers are white blood cells which are an essential part of the human immune system. They are often called as CD4 cells or T helper cells or T4 cells. Now why they are called as helper cells? Because one of their main roles is to send the signals to other types of immune cells, including the CD8 killer cells, which then destroy the infectious particles. Now another interesting thing is, if CD4 cells become reduced, depleted, for example, that may happen in HIV, or it may happen because of immune suppressions that occurs prior to a transplant. In that case, the body becomes susceptible to a wide range of infections. Now remember, HIV uses the same CD4 to gain an entry into the host T cells. And this is achieved through its viral envelope protein called as GP120. The binding to CD4 creates a shift in the conformation, that is the structure of the GP120, allowing the HIV to bind to the host cell. So the right answer for this question is all of these. Look on the screen. So this is the CD4, that is the T4 helper cell. It stimulates the B cell in case of infections. B cells in turn produce the plasma cells. Plasma cells in turn produce antibodies. Remember, antibodies are protective chemicals produced against antigens. So they help in protection, that is immune response. It also stimulates the DC cells. Now DC is nothing but the dendritic cells, which also form a very important part of the immune system. It also stimulates the macrophages, which bring about phagocytosis, that is they engulf the invading pathogen. And it may also stimulate the CD8 killer cells, which also are indirectly linked with the production of the memory cells. And the collective response is on the target cell. They hit the target cell and this brings about apoptosis. Now what is meant by apoptosis is the death of the cell, but which is not programmed. Okay, it is being induced and hence it is called as apoptosis. Hope this has helped you. Please like, subscribe and hit the bell icon and hang on with me with many more MCQs. Let's